related to archaeology. The ancient Egyptians remain a remarkable people historically. We still don't know entirely what their origins were, but presumably they were people who were indigenous to Africa, and maybe they were combinations, as the Egyptians that we know from the Old Kingdom were probably combined peoples coming from different parts of Africa as well as the Near East. So the blood was slightly mingled, but it made up for a very definitive kind of cultural entity.
After being constantly attacked by their neighbors, Egypt decided to expand its empire as far as it could, from Kush all the way to Syria. The Syrians, who fell under the spell of the Egyptians, found themselves taking a liking to being under the hold of the Egyptians. This empire would hold for 500 years, from the 16th century BC all the way to the 11th century BC. It's possible that if Egypt had not announced itself so heavily to foreigners, that it might have remained completely unconquered later. But Egypt had entered the international world as far as Greece and Rome. Even though some Egyptians ventured far and wide to the land of Punt and even lower to some parts of internal Africa, as evidence fetching a man who was a pygmy is a short person, and bringing them back into Egypt for their entertainment, they still found themselves locked out of deep Africa, knowing that there is more out there, even writing about the fact that they know that there's more out there, but never daring to venture so far. We know that they actually did go that far because we found some items deep into this area we called Rapta. We found pot shards and stuff like that that could only have been manufactured in Egypt. But still, Egypt seemed to like its own area and didn't like venturing too far away from where they were. One of the earliest to expand this empire was Thutmose III, who expanded from the Euphrates to Nubia during the 17th known military campaigns. He was the first pharaoh after Thutmose I to cross the Euphrates. Even though he ruled for 56 years, he didn't rule alone. His aunt Hatshepsut ruled with him for 22 of his first years as co-regent, even though women weren't usually in charge in Egypt. This woman, Hatshepsut, was both his stepmother and aunt. Yes, ancient Egypt was obsessed with incest, so figure that one out. But the point of this video is not to detail military campaigns made by several men, but instead to talk about the military campaigns decided by women. And why is it that if you go to sub-Saharan Africa, away from these North African plains, all of a sudden women start to pop up more and more as the founders or individuals that are most contributing to war efforts and planning of wars. For example, Queen Kandake Amanitore, seen here smiting her enemies. She was a Meroitic queen, a queen of Kush, and she ruled together with her son. Or Queen Kandake Amani Renas, who stopped the Roman expansion into the kingdom of Kush. Strabo writes about her and describes her as a masculine type of woman with one eye. And the 5 other Kandakes that ruled Ethiopia and were written down in the king list in Ethiopia. And as it's written, 21 queens have been recorded as sole regents in the kingdom of Ethiopia. In the kingdom of Congo, known as Kuba Kingdom, 9 female rulers ruled There was over 100 rulers in total, in their total history, but there were 9 females who ruled. There were also some queens who ruled with their husbands, but I didn't add them in this list. There's also Queen Zinga, who dealt with the Portuguese both intellectually and militarily, and by the time she died, her kingdom was dealing on equal foot with Portugal. Her sister Barbara took over after she died, meaning those are 2 different queens. And the daughter of Nzinga actually wanted to take over the kingdom as well, but she didn't. In Zambia, there was a queen, Mamochisane, who was replacing her father after he died. His father made sure that she was the heir, even though she had older brothers. She then stepped down, according to David Livingston, who she was friends with. And the reason why she stepped down was because, as queen, she had to rotate husbands in order to avoid them having power. And she decided that that was just too much for her. And she decided to step down and give her position to her brother. There's Queen Amina of the Zaza, who might have been fictional, but given how many warrior queens we've already gone through, I don't think there's any point of disputing it. West Africa has a series of female queens and female warriors, which we should talk about in another day because there's just too many of them. And to cap it all off, let's go to South Africa and talk about Mkabayu, who is a queen regent for a while Shaka Zulu's father was too young to rule. And we read, after Senzangakona's passing in 1816, his son Skujana was due to ascend, Kabaya recognizing a weakness of character within Skujana, organized for Senzangakona's other son, Shaka, to challenge Skujan. So you see here, she organized that Shaka Zulu be in charge, and basically she had her own son murdered in order for her. No, she had her own nephew murdered in order for her other nephew to take over because she thought he was too weak. Shaka Zulu expanded the Zulu Empire far and wide under her prediction and tutelage because she refused to marry and remained a top advisor in Shaka's kingdom. But after she learned that Shaka Zulu was going crazy, she decided to kill Shaka Zulu. And Shaka Zulu basically was killed by her her and 2 of her other nephews. She took Dingane and Mhlangane, who are both brothers of Shaka Zulu, and she told them to kill Shaka Zulu, and they did. After that,
And so now, after all these years in Mkabayi, I am once again in your hands.
but the assassinations didn't stop there. She then ordered Dingane, which was one of the brothers who killed Shaka Zulu, to have Mhlangana, the other brother, assassinated to assure that he would be in charge because she saw him as fit. This is why she was called the Kingmaker. This list, though extensive, doesn't even cover the number of queens that were out there in Africa's history. Not only that, they don't cover the assassins who are female. They don't cover the warriors that were female. They don't cover the planners, the backstabbers that were female, assassins for hire, the mercenaries that were female. This is only talking about those who, at least at one point, were queen.